At noon, in front of a room full of people who once treated me like a mistake, my ex's mother walked straight toward me, took my face in her trembling hands, and kissed me like she had been holding back a lifetime of regret. For 3 seconds, the entire engagement brunch froze. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Glasses hovered in the air. My ex stared at me like I had stolen something from him, and the woman who had once told me I was not good enough for her family whispered against my cheek, "I'm sorry. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the strange ways life brings broken people back into the light, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Diaries." Stories like this remind us that sometimes one small act of compassion can change everything. My name is Callum, and for nearly 2 years I had done everything possible to avoid the Harrow family. Not because I hated them, but because being near them reminded me of the worst season of my life. Their daughter, Maren Harrow, had once been my fiancée. We were supposed to marry in October, under maple trees outside a lakeside inn. Instead, 3 months before the wedding, she ended it with a message so cold I read it 6 times before accepting it was real. She said she needed someone more ambitious, someone who fit her world better. Her family had money, reputation, polished manners, and a way of making ordinary people feel like furniture. I had a repair shop, an aging pickup, and a heart that still believed loyalty mattered more than status. The invitation to Maren's younger brother's engagement brunch arrived by accident, or so I thought. A cream envelope slipped under my shop door, addressed in neat handwriting to my late mother's house, forwarded twice, then somehow landing in my hands. I should have thrown it away. But Alden, Maren's brother, had always been kind to me. When my mother was sick, he used to bring soup from the Harrow kitchen and pretend it was extra. So on that bright Saturday morning, I wore my only good navy jacket and drove across town to the Harrow estate, telling myself I would stay 20 minutes, congratulate him, and leave before anyone remembered how easily I had once been discarded. The brunch was held in the garden, under white tents glowing in the daylight. Everything looked expensive but strangely lifeless, like a photograph no one was allowed to touch. I saw Maren first near the fountain, wearing a pale yellow dress and a smile that tightened when she recognized me. Beside her stood her new boyfriend, a man with perfect hair and the relaxed confidence of someone who had never been asked to prove his worth. I almost turned around, but Alden spotted me and hugged me with real warmth. That one honest gesture kept me there longer than I planned. Then I saw her mother, Serafina Harrow. She looked older than I remembered. Still elegant, still composed, but tired around the eyes. She had been the hardest person to face during my relationship with Maren. She never shouted, never insulted me openly, but her silence cut deeper than words. She had once told Maren, while I stood close enough to hear, that love was easier when both people came from the same level. I carried that sentence for years like a stone in my chest. During the brunch, I tried to disappear into the edges. But fate has a cruel habit of dragging quiet people into the center. A waiter tripped near the steps, sending a tray of hot coffee toward Serafina's elderly sister. I moved without thinking, caught the woman by the shoulders, and took most of the spill across my sleeve. The garden gasped. The waiter apologized until his voice cracked. I laughed it off, saying the jacket had survived worse. But Serafina watched me differently after that, as if seeing a man she had spent years refusing to recognize. Alden insisted I stay for the toast. Maren avoided my eyes. Her boyfriend asked what I did for work with the soft smile people use when they already think they know the answer. I told him I restored old engines and rebuilt damaged things. Serafina heard that and lowered her glass. Something moved across her face, pain or memory, I couldn't tell. When the speeches began, Alden thanked everyone for believing in love that survives pressure, pride, and fear. His voice shook when he mentioned people who showed up even after being hurt. For one strange second, I knew he was talking about me. The guests turned. Maren flushed. And then Serafina rose from her chair. She walked toward me slowly, in full daylight, in front of her family, friends, neighbors, and the same people who had once watched me leave that house with my dignity in pieces. I thought she was going to ask me to go. Instead, she stopped before me with tears shining in her eyes. Her hands touched my face, gentle and shaking, and then she kissed my cheek, lingering just long enough for every whisper in the garden to die. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying the moment, wondering if grief, guilt, or wine had pushed her into it. But the next morning, while sunlight spread across my workshop floor, Serafina appeared at the open garage door wearing no diamonds, no perfect mask, only a gray cardigan and a face full of fear. She looked at me for a long moment and asked, "Remember last night?" I wiped grease from my hands and said I did. She stepped inside and looked around at the engines, tools, and old photographs of my mother taped above the workbench. Her voice broke when she told me the truth. Before Marin left me, Serafina had pushed her to do it. She had convinced her I would hold her back. She had believed reputation mattered more than character, until her own marriage quietly collapsed, until her friends vanished during hard times, until the wealthy people she trusted treated her pain like gossip. And then, over the years, she had watched from a distance as I cared for my sick mother, rebuilt my business after a fire, helped neighbors without asking for credit, and never once spoke badly about her family. The kiss, she said, was not romance. It was remorse. It was a public apology from a proud woman who finally understood that she had misjudged the only man who had ever loved her daughter without wanting anything in return. She had kissed my cheek because she did not trust herself to say the words without breaking that I wanted to be angry. Part of me had waited years for someone in that family to admit what they had done. But when the moment came, anger felt smaller than I expected. Serafina looked less like an enemy and more like a lonely woman standing in the wreckage of her own pride. So I made coffee in 2 chipped mugs and let her sit on the wooden stool near the door. We talked until the afternoon light shifted across the concrete floor. She told me Marin was not happy. Not because of me, not because of regret alone, but because she had spent her life chasing approval and had finally caught it, only to find it empty. I told Serafina that I could forgive her, but I could not go backward. Some doors close not because love dies, but because self-respect finally learns how to stand. A week later, Alden came to my shop with an old motorcycle he wanted restored before his wedding. Soon after, Marin came too. She stood in the doorway where her mother had stood and apologized without excuses. I accepted it. Not because it fixed everything, but because carrying bitterness had become too heavy. She cried when she realized I no longer hated her, and maybe that hurt her more than anger would have. Months passed. The Harrow family changed in small, imperfect ways. Serafina started volunteering at the community repair program I ran for struggling families who needed safe cars to keep their jobs. At first, people whispered. Then they watched her roll up her sleeves, answer phones, bring lunches, and treat every person who walked in like they mattered. Pride left her slowly, like winter leaving the ground. And me? I did not get the ending people expected. I did not marry my ex. I did not fall into some scandal with her mother. I simply became free. Free from the shame they had handed me. Free from the need to prove I had value. Free to understand that sometimes the most powerful apology is not the one that restores a relationship, but the one that restores a person's faith in themselves. Near the end of that year, on a clear morning filled with soft daylight, Serafina stood beside me at the opening of our new community garage. A single mother received the keys to a repaired car and cried into her little boy's hair. Serafina looked at me with tears in her eyes and said the same words she had whispered at the brunch, but this time her voice was steady. She said, "I'm sorry, Callum. And thank you for becoming kind instead of cruel." That was when I understood the real meaning of second chances. They are not always about getting back what you lost. Sometimes they are about becoming someone pain could not destroy. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Lifeline Diaries for more emotional stories about kindness, healing, and second chances. Special request: comment "I believe in second chances" if you have ever forgiven someone, not because they deserved it, but because you deserved peace. By the time the sun rose higher over the garage roof, I looked around at the people gathered there, people from different lives, different mistakes, different heartbreaks, and I realized that the kiss everyone had misunderstood was never the scandal. It was the beginning of a quiet healing. It was proof that even the proud can change, even the wounded can forgive, and even after being humiliated in front of everyone, a man can walk into the next morning with his heart still open.